This is a tale when something terrifying made its way to rural Michigan. Let me set the stage. The scene is a quaint house on 4 acres of land bordering a marsh. To get there, you need to travel down a dirt road full of holes and gashes in the sandy, rocky soil. Woodlands surround the rear portion of the property, and the vast lawn can be seen in the side and the front of the home. This home was my father's labor of love, and when he died, he left it to his 6 children. It is named Stonebrook Cottage. My father, Daddy-O as I call him, took great care of this property for 30 years, building a gazebo in the woods and a theater to create dramatic scenes or recite Shakespeare. You could watch these performances while sitting on rotting boards used as benches around the theater. The stage itself requires a bit of death-defying, or rather gravity-defying skill, as it lay at a preposterous angle, making the performer feel as though he's going to constantly fall ass over tea kettle. But to Daddy-O, it was the Globe Theater. All of us children loved this property, and it was decided my brother Jeff would have his 60th birthday party there. It was a brilliant sight. All the siblings and their families descended on Stonebrook. Our family friends, the Casses, who are really more like family, were also there. Our parents had been best friends, so we truly grew up like siblings. And we loved camping trips that we took every summer with our fathers. So it was only natural that some of us would be camping in tents on the great lawn of Stonebrook Cottage for the party, while others stayed in the house. One night we had been telling jokes around the campfire, and many were jokes we had told over and over again throughout the last 40 years. And even though we all knew the punchlines, they would send us roaring with laughter or groans of appreciation. Some jokes were ones our fathers, who are both now deceased, would tell as their specialty. So we all enjoyed reminiscing how our fathers each told their jokes with a particular gusto and dramatics. My Daddy-O throwing his whole body into a joke for theatrics, and Mr. Cass was one who would continue to laugh and laugh while telling the joke, so that it took an entirety to get to the punchline, which was so corny that everyone laughed more at his infectious laughter than the joke itself. And that night, Tim Cass told us a story how he found a notebook of his own from when he was 6 years old, and he had written his own jokes on the pages. And after each joke, he wrote, "Do you get it?" That struck us so funny that we kept using the tagline, "Do you get it?" after our jokes from then on that night. So you can see how our two families loved each other, and our fathers, and our traditions, and our tales around the campfire. But no tale was to be as frightening as the night something terrifying was heard at Stonebrook Cottage. I had retired to my tent after my fair share of revelry around the campfire. A few of my brothers were still up, and I could hear their voices and laughs as I fell asleep. At 4:49 a.m., I awoke in my sleeping bag. I had to use the bathroom, so I exited the tent. I noticed the campfire had died out. It was dark. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like a screeching sound. At first I thought it might be Tim and Veronica snoring, since they had been known to saw logs so loudly that it would frighten wildlife. But then I recalled they both had their CPAPs on and were not able to snore. I heard the screeching again. I walked around the house along the woods to go inside, but as I got closer to the woodland, I heard the screeching grow louder. It was coming from the woods. Convinced it was a demon or a rabid cryptid lurking just out of sight in the darkness, my body went into fight or flight mode. I was sure that creature had seen me and was on my scent, chasing me down to tear me apart. So I took off running. I ran back behind the house, away from the woodland. I had to get to the entrance on the other side of the house. As I ran, I passed through the tents, and in my terror, I tripped over the guide wire on Carolyn and Raphael's tent, almost falling. I would have been like one of those women in horror movies when they are running through the woods and they trip and they start crawling only for the beast to catch up to them. But that wasn't going to be me. No, not that night. Determined to survive and escape the screeching beast, I stayed upright and ran to the house in the darkness in my flip-flops. Yeah. Once inside, I felt safe, but listened at the window to hear the screeching as it continued. It was more faint, but still there. The rest of the house was quiet and dark. No one was stirring. After I used the bathroom, I had to get back to my tent. If the beast hadn't followed me to the house, I was probably safe. I knew I would feel okay once I got to the security of my tent. That thin nylon shell is magical. I made it safely, crawled into my sleeping bag, and tried my best to quiet my heart and fall back to sleep. The next morning, I told my harrowing tale to all who would listen. It turned out I was not the only one who heard the screeching from the woods. Others who had also been sleeping in the tents had heard the hideous sound as well. Carolyn recalled lying in bed, listening to the screeches, and that her tent had been attacked by what she could only believe to be the chupacabra. She stated she prepared herself to be torn apart by this dangerous creature. Of course, that attack had just been me clutching into her tent as I ran in fear. No chupacabra. But we all agreed that there was something screeching in the woods. After dinner that night, we were all gathered by the woodland, and the screeching started again. This time it did not wait for the quiet of the wee hours in the morning. We all stood in wonder and disbelief. What could we be hearing? Some of my brothers demonstrated machismo and headed to the woods to investigate. But no one could see what it was. What was making the noise? A few recordings were made of the sounds. Now, logic and science started to overcome the crowd. People began Googling creatures that scream in the night. It was determined that it sounded most like a barn owl. But Brother Ben, who was good friends with an ornithologist, stated barn owls have not been seen in Michigan in 50 years, so it could not be it. But I stated, with global climate change, anything was possible. Others did not think it was the owl, so more research was done. The next day I had 2 sounds from some auditory research of my own, and I presented it to the crew. One was this sound.
Oh my Lord.
That was an opossum. Terrifying, right? The next was this sound. That's the barn owl. Also terrifying. Most votes went with the barn owl. Ben, however, of course, reiterated how it could not be. There were some votes that it was neither sound. Eventually, the sound of the juvenile barred owl came into play. Yes, barred, not barred, which do exist in Michigan. Most had agreed that this sound was correct.
Oh. Ooh.
Yeah. Mystery solved. Although I'm a person of logic and science, I'm also my father's daughter and have a creative mind. So that sound in the woods was not a barred owl, nor a barn owl, nor a possum. I'm still convinced it was made by a banshee, or chupacabra, or some other cryptid just making its way into the woods of rural Michigan, and it has a terrible tail. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Take